Hi everyone, this is Constellations here, and today we are starting the Shinobu Math series. We are taking a break from Yelan Math series. We have not completed the Yelan Math series yet, although we finished comms. I have not done the 4-star weapons. So we are doing Shinobu here first because if like me you are farming tenacity for Yelan, you would want to know what stats to look out for Shinobu. So that's the reason why I'm doing the Shinobu Math series here. This week I'll probably do about 3 Shinobu Math guides because I realized that 1 wasn't enough. I have to do 3. So we'll do 3 Shinobu Math videos followed by 1 to 2 Yelan Math videos this week. The Yelan Math video will likely be the Favonius weapon because I know a lot of people are thinking that Favonius bow is better than Sacrificial. No worries, I'll do a detailed and in-depth comparison between the two. So this is Shinobu. We're going to talk about Shinobu with Favonius sword as a general build where she does a battery roll as well, and this ER is sufficient for her own as well. Okay, for her own burst. Okay, so it's the first math guide, so I am going to talk about the passive and constellations like always, but other than that, I've added the talents as well. I've decided that moving on for the first math guide of each character, I will talk about the talents as well. And we'll talk about her design. Once we go through the talents, passive, and constellations, we'll talk about Shinobu's design, overall design. The artifact sets to consider the weapons, the CR versus HP versus healing bonus circlet with Favonius, comparing damage and heals. And obviously we'll have a TLDR and a update on what's coming next for the Shinobu video series. So without further ado, right, let me go into the talents itself. Now, normal attack talent wise, Shinobu is not a normal attack DPS, so I'm not going to talk about her normal attacks, even though the shuriken throwing in her normal attack is really cool. I swear, MiHoYo always does cool attack animation for characters who are not going to be a normal attack DPS. I don't know why. Now, next, her E, which is the elemental skill. You'll see here that I'm just going to compare the level 9 and level 12 here. There's an initial hit, there's a healing factor to it and a damage factor to it. Every 1.5 seconds for both the heal and the damage proc. It's a 30% current HP activation cost, and the lowest Shinobu can go is 20% HP of her max. It lasts for 12 seconds and the cooldown is 15 seconds, so there's a very nice uptime on this 75 in ring. Her E does an initial hit followed by a proc that heals active character and deals damage in an AoE around active character every 1.5 seconds. The AoE is definitely better than say TT's. It's decent. It's not big, but it's decent. And just like Hu Tao, it consumes 30% of her current HP to activate, but lowest you can go is with 20% HP, and this is very, very important because this means that a 20% HP, consistently being at 20% HP might be her playstyle. I'll talk more about that later. Her E uptime is also pretty good, 80% uptime at C0 and 100% uptime at C2, because C2 extends it by 3 seconds. Now, it's great that we finally have an Electro Healer to use with Hydro DPS in Taser comps, but the HP scaling on her heal doesn't look too high. That's number 1. And I believe there's a reason for this. It's mainly due to how Hoviverse is designing this character to be played, and I'll talk more about it later. Her attack percentage scaling on her heal damage is so low, so low, that I won't even consider her as having attack scaling because it's just so low. This is like a level 1 normal attack. In fact, at level 9, the damage it does is lesser than a level 1 normal attack multiplier. So yeah, just forget about her E damage. Okay, her E is not meant for DPS per se, not in the traditional manner anyway. Now she's doing heals via her E, so I think it's too much to expect high damage from her E as well. Remember, she's just a healing character. She's a healing support. She's a healer. Okay, but not to worry. I will still look into some DPS factors for her or builds for her, so at least we know how she works in terms of the overall available builds. But for reference, right, if you're using Kokomi, right, you aren't really using her jellyfish for damage, right? At least not when her burst is not up. But either way, the way I use my Kokomi is also just a healer, so I really don't care about how much damage she does. The more important thing is the Hydro application, and Electro application, Shinobu will apply. So that's that. Now, before you say Kokomi has higher multipliers, because her E damage skills on attack percentage and it's close to 200% at level 12, Kokomi has no crit, Shinobu has. So depending on artifacts, even with min stat focusing on HP, especially if we're using Favonius, the gap may not be as big as you think. But the most importantly is that both of them are not high in damage from their E anyway, and they are not high in the overall team DPS contribution as well. So it really doesn't matter whether Kokomi has higher multipliers than Shinobu, because both of them are not meant for their damage from their E proc anyway. So like I said, the low attack percentage scaling doesn't matter to me, because her E is mainly for healing and electro application, just like Kokomi's E is mainly for healing and hydro application. If you want her E to deal high damage through HP scaling, you're gonna lose out on even more healing, because Hoyoverse has to balance the character, right? But that's one thing. The heal on her, the HP scaling on her heal is already pretty low though. Let's talk about the burst next. So this is her Q, her burst. You have level 9, level 12. You have the damage per hit as well as the total damage. The 2 seconds and 3.5 seconds. So when her HP is less than equal 50% when Q is used, the Q lasts 3.5 seconds instead of 2 seconds, thus the increased damage. The duration extension is off field, so it wouldn't extend your overall rotation, i.e. it's actually a pretty nice DPS increase for her. But you do not need to wait for less than 50% HP before casting, since it doesn't do double the 2 second damage unless you actually have energy issues with her. But there is another way to look at this, and it is whether or not the damage is so low that you should not cast it, because it affects your overall team DPS. Then I'll talk more about that later. Now at first glance, the HP scaling looks good for this elemental burst. But here's the thing, unlike Sarah, who is kind of similar to her where she's a support with a high damage burst, or rather high multipliers on the burst. So Sarah, the thing about Sarah is that she doesn't need to sacrifice her buff amount to increase her Q damage, because her buff damage is very simple, it's based on her base attack. You don't need high attack percentage. Unlike Shinobu, you need high HP percentage to improve your healing. So in other words, your Shinobu is going to have to sacrifice her healing if you want to do a Q focus build for her. So I'm not very optimistic about the Q focus build, but I'll still do math for it in the very near future, which will be this week anyway. Okay, let's talk about passives. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? Gaining 25% more rewards when they patch on an Inazuma expedition that takes 20 hours. So it's good for busy folks if, and this is a bit important, if we can get monster characters with this effect in future as well. Now the biggest obstacle now is that we do not have monster characters that does this, right? Breaking free. When Shinobu's HP is not higher than 50%, her healing bonus is increased by 15%. Again, this goes back into the whole play style of maintaining her HP lower than 50% or even at 20%. So it ties in with the way her E works. Basically, you can think of your HP as a resource to increase her healing bonus. I mean, it's decent, 15% is decent, and it explains her HP scaling on her heals. Essentially, Hoyoverse wants you to maintain your HP lower than an X threshold, which is 50% in this case, for her to heal more. So if you don't do that, her heals will fall in comparison to other 4-star healers. So do you understand? Basically, the HP scaling is lower because she has this passive where Hoyoverse wants you to maintain your HP lower than 50% so that her heal can start to match other healers. But you'll see in the math whether or not it really does match, and we'll talk about that later. So the last passive, which is the A4 passive, Heart's Repose. Sanctifying Rays abilities will be boosted based on Shinobu's EM. So healing amount is 75%, damage type is 25%. Based on the description above, it is a flat increase for both heal and damage. So if you have 1000 EM, you get plus 750 heal and plus 250 before the damage bonuses, crit resistance, etc. damage on her. The heal boost is not really good considering the amount of HP you lose to get EM, and damage is just pathetic to be honest. You may think she has EM skilling because of this, but to me, when the benefits are so low, this is just a good to have like ISPA for passive. But to be fair, I have not done the math for EM skilling yet. I may be surprised. Okay, I might be wrong. Maybe EM has some worth in using, and we'll see more later or in future videos. So full EM on her may be an option if you want to use her in comms utilizing Overload and /or EC. But you gotta remember that the chances of her being actually being the character to trigger is not that high, especially for EC. If you have seen my EC test for Kokomi, there is no easy way to ensure who triggers the EC. You can increase the rate through specific order in your rotation, but it's still very RNG. Okay? I'll definitely do math for a full EM build, but I'm kinda doubtful of it being a good damage build, simply because of the above. But like I say, I have not done the math, I may be wrong. Even with a assumption that each character triggers 25% of the ECs in the EC comp, maybe this is still better than her HP. Because after all, her full HP support build, I really doubt that it can deal any significant damage as well. So we are comparing like two low tiers in terms of damage. I might be wrong. Maybe the EM is better. But yeah, we'll see in future math guides. Constellations, I'll just quickly talk about this. So C1 increases her Q AoE by 50%, it's nice, and I would say it's mandatory if you want to do a Q focus build that sacrifices her heals. Grass Ring C2 increases your E by duration by 3 seconds, which basically gives you 100% uptime. I would say it's quite possibly the most important and best constellation for her, because we are just using her as a healer plus electro application, right? In fact, even the electro application is not that important. Mainly the heal. Now, next, we have the increasing the level of her E by 3. So it improves the healing, it's good to have, and I'll say it's a good place to start for a healer build, constellation wise. C4. Now, I know C4 looks like it's not bad. You know, you have a concept where if your active character does normal charge or plunging attacks, it will trigger this Thundergrass mark. Thus, at 9.7% of Shinobu's max HP, can occur every 5 seconds. But here's the thing. 5-second cooldown is the biggest hurdle to this effect being good. Although, if you consider another factor, which is that Shinobu wouldn't really have high crit values other than kill focus, the damage of this is really not that great. But this C4 does encourage you to build more HP over EM, that's for sure. Next, C5, just give you plus 3 level of Q, so only good if you are doing a Q focus DPS build, otherwise meh. Now, C6. When Koko Shinobu takes little damage, this instance of damage will not take her down. This effect will automatically trigger when HP reaches 1 and will trigger once every 60 seconds. When Cookie Shinobu's HP drops below 25%, she will gain 150 EM for 15 seconds. This effect will trigger once every 60 seconds. So if you read it carefully, it's 2 different effects with 2 different trigger points with the 2 separate cooldowns, although the cooldown duration is the same. So first is the cheat death, and second is the EM boost that can be triggered without dying. The first cheat death specifies 1 instance of damage, so it's very different from Hu Tao's C6. So I expect this to be much weaker. Like if you get hit with a multi-attack, like I don't know, like Jovishap doing the stand on the floor with all the rocks, like a rock wave with multiple hits, the Shinobu is just still gonna die. Okay, because all she does is block 1 instance of damage. This is not a good cheat death effect, to be honest, unless it works differently from the description. Okay. Now the second thing is EM boost can have a 25% uptime if you keep Shinobu's HP at 20%, which is the threshold for her E. So let's say you keep her at 20% after using your E sufficient number of times and not healing her, such that this effect happens. But then again, it's still only 25% uptime. It's 15 seconds to 60 seconds. So the way I would see this is more like maybe 1 out of every 4 rotations, or 1 out of every 3 rotations it triggers once, for example. So not that great. So to be honest, right, I think this is the worst C6 I've ever seen on a 4-star character, because all you gain is 150 EM on her, which, like I said, is just a good to have bonus for A4. At least before I've done the math for EM, the full EM build. It might be better than just a good to have, but nevertheless, it's just 150 EM on her alone. So damage wise, like I said, you're subject to who triggers reaction, so 150 EM is really not that great. I mean, if you look at the healing, right, 75% of 150, what does that give you? Less than 120. Damage wise, it's an additional less than 40 as well. Not great. Now, it would be a really nice C6 if this provides EM to nearby party members, not just Shinobu. Or even just Shinobu plus active character in her E. Even then, that would make her a good support, right? Because at least she has the capability to give EM to whoever is in her E, or maybe the entire team. I mean, even a lower 100 EM to nearby party members will still make this C6 much better. And more importantly, it really solidifies her role as a strong support, right? I mean, it gives her another avenue, another way to buff the team. But unfortunately, it does not. We do not have such a effect. This is the one that we have. So yeah, I think this really is one of the worst C6 I've seen. Okay, now let's talk about her design now that we have gone through her talents, passive, and constellations. I hope from the above that it's clear that Hoyoverse wants us to go full HP on her in order to maximize her bonuses that rely on HP thresholds, such as the plus 1.5 second Q duration, the 15% healing bonus, the 150 EM from C6. Now, if you have 45 to 50k HP on Shinobu, you would have 9 to 10k HP constantly if maintaining at the 20% HP threshold from her E, which is very manageable in my opinion, having 9 to 10k current HP. Now, 45 to 50k HP on her is quite doable because her base HP is very high at 12k. It's 2k higher than other HP scaling characters such as Barbara, Diona, Thoma, etc. Barbara, Diona, Thoma are all like 9 plus k to 10k. High 9k and low 10k. That's the range. So her having 12k HP is very nice and helps a lot in achieving this figure. Now, if you don't go full HP on her, I think you will end up with a healer that needs to heal herself first before healing others, and that feels really, really bad. Why the hell would I want a healer that has to heal herself first before healing others, right? Okay, but to be fair, I have not done the math for like all the different type of permutation between HP and EM, so that will happen in the near future. So maybe I'm wrong, but the point about her having to heal herself and others is still there if it's really required. Now, maybe you don't perhaps you don't value her healing, you just want to go Q focus DPS build or full EM build on her, and I'll do the math for those builds too, but it remains to be seen which is better. In fact, I'll say that the biggest problem for Shinobu is that her weapon is a sword. And there are no swords with HP substats, that's number 1. And number 2, right, other weapons like Catalyst, not only are there HP substats, there are also very good weapon effects like Trillion Tails of Dragon Slayer, TLDR, Prototype Ember, etc. So I really do hope that we get a better weapon. It can be a 4-star or 3-star weapon with HP substat, and I think it'll still be nice. A very good option for her. Okay. Now that we finished talking about her design, we understand that she needs high HP for maintaining the 20% HP threshold, so that you don't have to heal her before she heals others. Let's talk about artifact sets now. Okay, sets. Artifact builds. Okay, artifact builds. So both 4-piece TOTM and 4-piece Noblesse are good options for her in HP support build. But I would prefer 4-piece TOTM because 20% HP is better than 20% burst bonus damage, especially considering her HP management playstyle. When you get C2 eventually, 4-piece TOTM will give you a longer attack boost duration over 4-piece Noblesse, 3 seconds longer. because it's very easy for her to maintain the 4-piece TOTM effect with her E. You can also farm, the good thing is that you can also farm for Yelan's 2-piece TOTM for lower ER comms for Yelan, while farming for Shinobu, or vice versa. While farming for Shinobu, you farm for Yelan. Whatever is your, whichever character you are more interested in, it doesn't change the fact that you are farming for, you can farm for both at the same time. Okay? So I will be using 4-piece TOTM for her in HP support builds. And maybe EM builds as well, because 4TF for her, the damage increase on EC is nice, or overload is nice. The cooldown reduction is a bit wasted on her, so I wouldn't want to use that unless you are C0 and you really want 100% uptime on her. Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about weapons. In general, you can use Favonius sword on her for her to fulfill a battery role as well, along with 4-piece TOTM giving buffer role plus her kit itself, turning her into a battery buffer healer electro role, which is nice. But the only downside about Favonius sword is that you need to build CR on her. That is a real feel bad factor, yeah? Now, if you have Raiden in the team, you can use Iron Sting or even PJC if you have a spare PJC. And why do I say spare? Because PJC's value is better served on actual DPS characters, in my opinion. Freedom Swan is also a viable option too if you don't have Kazuha with Freedom Swan in the team, because they don't overlap. For my math, since Favonius is the better option in general, I will use Favonius here. I'll cover other weapons in future math guides as well. Let's go into the actual math itself. I spent 20 minutes talking about her kit, weapon, artifacts, etc. So I hope it helps you guys get a good idea on how she works. Now let's look at her damage. Don't expect high damage, by the way. She's a healer and a 4-star healer for that matter. Yep. So her E, over the course of 12 seconds at C0, does 3k damage. That is so bad that I don't even know what to say. I think even Kokomi does much better than this. C2, it's only 3.9k. But you gotta remember that this is a support build, right? We are not focusing on her damage. That's why she has no hydro damage bonus. This is HP CR, triple HP, and HP healing bonus. So naturally, she's not going to have any high damage. In fact, even her Q damage is pretty low, especially if you don't have the less than 50% HP effect. Okay. So Shinobu's damage is very low as expected of a healer, and this is solo damage. This has not factored in team buffs, etc. So it's not very fair to say whether using her Q will actually drop the overall team TPS, especially if you are using her with some really stacked top tier or tier A to S DPS. I'll cover that in the next video when we include buffs and the 25% EC procs as well. We'll look at the overall damage in the comp to decide whether or not it's worthwhile to use her Q. Because we don't want to go into a scenario where her Q is not worth using. Because if her Q is not worth using, your Favonius substat of 61 ER is completely wasted, and that feels really bad. Although the energy battery effect is still there, but yeah, you know what I mean. Now let's talk about healing. These are not high. Okay, let's be honest. These are not high. I mean, 5.2k is still okay. 4k is to me a minimum. Her heals, even in HP support build, is not really high. If you take 4k heal as a minimum, and by the way, minimum doesn't mean that it's good. It's just a minimum acceptable heal amount. You need healing bonus circuit at C0. Because if you don't have healing bonus circuit at C0, what you have is 3k heal. 3k heal is really bad, by the way. It basically means that you can only afford to heal one character from red, the HP bar being red until green. More or less, or maybe 2 characters at most. But it's still bad because you can't heal the whole team. But here's the thing, right? It's much easier to build CR with CR Circlet for Favonius rather than healing bonus. So this does cause an issue. Because unlike other support characters, the healing bonus may not make the circlet. Let's say for Yunjing, for example, okay? A defense circlet Yunjing versus a CR circlet Yunjing, the loss is not as big as, say, a healing bonus. Because healing bonus If you understand how the formula works, it increases your heal amount by a much more significant amount than defense does to Yunjin's buffs, for example. So yeah, it's quite a painful point. Of course, if you happen to have all the right artifacts for her to get like 45 CR with a healing bonus circlet, it's not an issue. But it's quite tough because you need like 5 CR base rolls across all your 5 artifacts, and you need 8 CR upgrades. And all this for a support. For a support, by the way, it doesn't feel good. Now, of course, C3 solved this problem for the CR circlet. You get 3.5k heal before the less than 50% effect, and with the less than 50% effect, you do get the 4k minimum. And you will eventually get C3, right? Even if you have to P, but yeah, you will take time. Now, for folks who think that 4k heals is too low to be minimum, then she's going to be even worse for you. But just to share a bit of perspective, my Bennett is healing about 4k plus now because I'm giving him a semi SUB-DPS role too, investing a little in his crit and crit damage. I honestly don't run into issues where his heal is insufficient even without dodging and focusing on DPS. But I do have higher damage, so maybe in a long drawn out fight, 4k heal may not be enough. It's possible, I cannot rule out that factor. But at least you know where her heal stands. So obviously 5k plus heals is more comfortable. And it's achievable here at C3 with healing bonus circlet and Favonius. And we call it C3 is because it's level 12E, so you need to invest in her talent levels as well. So honestly speaking, it doesn't feel good that you have to invest so much in her, right? So this is the TLDR. From her design, it looks like Hoyoverse wants us to go full HP on her so that the 20% HP threshold is manageable, yeah? 9 to 10k HP with a 45 to 50k max HP in order to get all these bonuses. But I'll do math to compare the other two builds as well, Q Focus SUB-DPS build, full EM build. Now for detailed analysis on her talents, passive and constellations, please refer to the specific sessions for all the details. To me, the biggest problem for Shinobu is that her weapon is a sword and there are no swords with HP substats, unlike Catalysts, where you have TTODS and Prototype Ember. It's not just substat, they have good effects as well. So hopefully we get one in future. Now, in terms of artifacts, both Tenacity and Noblesse are viable options for HP support build, but I would say that Tenacity is better. Please refer to the specific section for details. Favonius Sword is great for giving her a battery roll. If you are using her with Raiden, then Iron Sting or even PJC will be better. FS is also viable as well to improve her support role, especially if you don't have Kazuha with FS in the team because the FS effect do not overlap. Her damage is bad, okay? There's no way to sugarcoat this, her damage is just bad. And it's expected of a healer with a HP support build plus CR for Favonius. So instead of fully focusing on HP on healing, you still have to get CR. But getting the CR doesn't really help your damage as well because of the fact that your crit damage is also not high. So yeah, it's not a good situation for her damage wise. But it's okay, I mean, she's a healer. If you are going to build her as a healer, you shouldn't expect her to deal high damage. Simple as that. And another thing is that this is a solo damage. Right now in this math guide, it's solo damage, it's not taking into consideration team buffs. So it's not fair to say whether using her Q will actually drop overall team DPS because of how low it is. Especially if you are using her with really stacked tier A to S DPS. And I'll cover that in next video when we include the buffs and the EC plots. Regardless, you should still use her Q if you're using with Raiden though, for the Raiden resolve stats. Especially if you have C1 Raiden. Okay, now let's talk about CR versus HP versus healing bonus circlet with Favonius for heals. TLDR wise, be prepared for less than 4k heals at C0 if you want to use Favonius on her with a CR circlet because you don't have good luck with CR substats. So if you want her to be able to fulfill a battery role with Favonius, you need to get CR circlet, right? And provided that you're not lucky with the substats. So if you get CR circlet, what is going to happen is that you are going to end up with less than 4k heals at C0. So you have to judge for your own team comp from your own experience, from your own characters, the way that they are managing now. Do you really need more than 4k heals? That's one thing to consider. Otherwise, if you use Healing Bonus Circlet and get enough, and are still able to get enough Circlet CR for Favonius, you'll still be able to heal 4k at C0. And when we say less than 4k heal, we are talking about like 2.9k, 3k heals, yeah? That's painful. Now at C3, regardless of which circlet, be it Healing Bonus or CR Circlet, you'll be able to get 4k plus heals, so that's nice. HB Circlet gives us slightly better heals than CR Circlet, but it still falls off versus Healing Bonus Circlet. Although HB Circlet does give you about 500 more HP to work with at 20% HP threshold, so slightly easier time in terms of managing the 20% HP. So that's about it. I would say that if you do have enough pulls and she comes along with a 5-star that you want, getting C3 should not be that difficult unless you are really unlucky. I know of folks who get like C1 Ito before getting a C0 Goro, for example. So when it comes to 4-star constellations, since there are 3 rate up 4-star characters, it does have a bit of variance there, a bit of RNG there. So I can't say that, oh, if you do a couple of pulls on her, you'll be able to get C3. Generally speaking, if your luck is not too bad, yes, but there are always outlier cases, right? But regardless, if you do have C3, then it's nice. The Favonius with CR Circlet build can work and still give you 4k heals, so that's not too bad. But it's very copium for me when I say it's not too bad, right? Because right now, just based on the current HP support build, she's not a great 4-star. Let's face it, damage-wise she's bad, expected of a healer. But the problem is that her heal is not high as well. And especially if you want to give her Favonius to give her an energy roll as well, a battery roll as well, then you have to be able to accept 3k heal at C0 and 4k heal at C3. So, she's really not a great 4-star. There's no way for me to be copium about this. I just have to be straightforward and say that she's not a great 4-star. And I'll say that she's only required to fill the Electro Healer role, which would be the healer in a Hydro DPS Taser comp. Where, for example, you're using a Hydro DPS like Child, like Ayato, or maybe even Yelan. So honestly, there's no need to pull for her if you're not going to have a Hydro DPS Taser comp setup. Very nice and simple and very straightforward, right? Don't need to pull. She's not good enough to pull for unless you need an Electro Healer in a Hydro DPS Taser comp. That's it. Now, conclusion may change after I work on the math for the other 2 builds though, so I'll leave this conclusion here subject to change for now. We will revisit this for each of the other 2 builds as well, and we'll make a final conclusion at the end of the 3rd build video. Okay? So, Shinobu video series wise, what's coming up next will be the full HP versus full EM build in a Yelan Taser comp using Iron Steam. Nothing new, I already mentioned this when I did the Yelan Math Guide 5, talking about Shinobu using Iron Steam. But I have not talked about her builds, so we will explore both full HP and full EM. And also some permutation, hybrid HP, some EM, etc. I'll cover those, no worries. 3rd video will be the PJC for Q focus DPS build. Yeah, I know PJC is the so-called spare weapon that I talk about, but it is still the best. It's likely still the best weapon for Q focus DPS build. So I will do some math on that. We'll see what's the potential. But I'm not holding my breath. Yeah. Alright. And after that we'll do the Ayato Taser comp. But before I do the Ayato Taser comp and other weapon comparison for Shinobu, we'll probably go back to Yelan Math series. We'll resume the Yelan Math series and we'll permutate. We'll do math for the 4-star weapon and 3-star weapon options for her. Okay, so yep, that's it for today's video. I hope the Shinobu video has been helpful to you guys in terms of understanding her kit and seeing where her heals and damage lie at. And of course, the most important conclusion here, where she's not looking like a good 4-star right now. I can't even say that she's a good 4-star. I mean, we are not even talking about great or good. It's not even good. It's not that she's not great. It's that she's not good. So yeah, I mean, if you are looking for electro healer in Hydro DPS Taser comp, then yes, you can pull for her, and I will try to find builds to work for her in Yelan Taser comp, which is why the next video I'm really going to look in depth on HP versus EM. Hell, I'll also do PGG for Q Focus DPS build in Yelan Taser comp as well, which is a Hydro DPS Taser comp, right? We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So let me know in comments if there are any specific math you would like, and I'll see if it can be done. Join me over at Twitch. Better yet, join me over at Twitch where I answer almost every question there. This is the Twitch link. The link is in the description as well. So if you like the content, remember my video and click subscribe for more. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.